So I know when my son was a senior, he participated in Running Start. So his entire senior year was spent, well, the goal was his entire senior year was supposed to be spent at CCRI. It was during COVID and it didn't work out quite as well because now he was in essence teaching himself college classes at home. It did not work. So Cheriho was able to pivot pretty readily so that he could take some classes and now become a dual enrollment student for his second semester senior year. But he graduated with five classes, college classes worth of credits. So in essence, when he entered in as a freshman, he was a sophomore. So I don't. Can you tell me a little bit about the participation? I apologize if I missed it in the presentation. About how many kids take advantage of the Running Start program or the dual enrollment? And I don't need hard numbers. If you have an approximation.
And will be reflected on their college transcript when they arrive.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. It was eye-opening for me because Andrew at the time was kind of done with high school and wanted a different challenge, and had it not been during COVID, I think it would have been a much better experience that threw everything for a loop. He was now just in his room and really teaching himself college classes. It didn't go particularly well for the second semester. But I think that's an opportunity here that we have for our students that really shows how robust our program of studies is that you can, if you are smart about it, a child can graduate here with many, many college credits, so without paying for anything. So it's not that they're signing a 2-year commitment, that they have to go to CCRI for 2 years, complete the 2 years. They're getting it while they're going to high school. A little bit of a rub, a little bit with Running Start, and the fact that we're paying for that experience. But honestly, it was eye-opening for me as somebody who was looking down the barrel of college tuition. That, oh, this is an amazing opportunity for my child to get college credits, and that translated really well in terms of making him a more desirable applicant for colleges. He got a large college scholarship, I think, in large part of it because of it, but also a different experience. So when we talk about those budgetary items, when we talk about how many students are participating in AP classes, how many students are part of the Running Start program, it's quite a number of students, which I think is a feather in our cap, but also it's not just that they're just getting a higher level education class here, it's real world economic, has economic, can't think of the right word, makes an impact, advantages, thank you, for them. So it's just something I want to be mindful of as we talk about our program of studies, and as we talk about, are there ways where we need to cut in our budget? You know, it can be somewhat appealing to look at, all right, we don't have that many kids taking these classes, but really you're going to put those students at a disadvantage as we narrow those options down. Yeah?
budget that we are paying some tuition credits. So my question is, and that's going to be, there's a line item in our budget that shows that, okay? My question to you experts is, if we didn't, if, first of all, does Charahoe have to pay, for the, to URI, for the child to take a course and get college credit? Do we have to pay that money to URI under obligation? Okay, and if we're not, would the parent be paying the college tuition for the child that's enrolled in the charity?
I don't know that you have enough information right now to answer that. That sounds like a,
Do you want to know for next year?
Yeah. I know that.
We have seven slots budgeted at 5,000 for 60. So total 38,000.
That's running. Watch running, yeah.
Yeah.
Through CCRI.
Correct.
And the
We'll
reason why
address that.
Craig is saying that's a budgetary question, but
and
I
he's right.
wanted, while these ladies
A
were
little
here.
leniency.
Excuse me?
No, go ahead.
Okay, while you're here, I just wanted to know how critical that is if somebody decides that we don't have to pay that. So would it cut into that program that incentivizes the kids to take college credit?
As principals, we're always going to advocate for opportunities for students to pursue post-secondary opportunities, whether it's culinary career, any opportunity they can advance their skill set, show them they've applied rigor to their programming. We're gonna
And that's why we appreciate it.
So Ms. Brennan is going to hold on for a second because the next item on the agenda is our 2023-2024 high school program of studies. Just for clarification, this is an item that comes to the school committee every year that's revised and updated based on the current programs that are running. I do recommend approval of the 2023-2024 high school program of studies, and then Ms. Brennan is going to give you a quick review of the Google site they created to make this very accessible.
So you guys have the program of studies document in the documentation form. For those of you that have been here, you may have noticed it's a little bit straightforward where there's not a lot of images and pictures, and it's purposeful because we have created a Google site now that is a little bit more interactive for students to access the program of studies, to see it in a different way, instead of scrolling through 96 pages of a document. So you can see up here is the launching or the landing site, and it has all of the same elements of the program of studies that you guys have in front of you, just on different pages, including the grading and all of those elements. So it will be. I'm waiting for the program of studies to be approved before this gets launched live. And so again, having all of the same elements that are in the program of studies, including the courses listed. So if you were to go to a section, you can see all of the different options of courses, and then if you just click the drop down, it gives you the description, gives you the number of credits on certain courses that may have prerequisites. It has the prerequisite listed right there, so students know what they need to have prior to taking this course. And including in Charahoe Tech, if you were to go to Charahoe Tech, one of the sites here, it also includes the pathway and all of the requirements of the pathway. And then just some images, including the certifications that students get if they go through this pathway. So just some images there, some more interaction with the program of studies. There's also a section here on college liaison programs, and that includes the entire listing of all of the courses that, subject to our agreement with colleges and universities, but all of the courses that have dual credit if you're enrolled in those courses, and all of our AP course listing. I just wanted to be able to show you that while you have the document and you're approving the program of studies in terms of the content, we do have this new site that we're ready to launch as soon as you guys are approved.
Gives you a parent document showed up to an HG spent weeks, interpreting elements. As you can see, we have progress and course offerings. She manually transfer all of these to this new site for ease of use for students, definitely. So it gives me here not saying anything extra. So
Great, thank you.
As a parent of a high schooler, thank you. It's great. It's exciting.
We are here for any questions on the program of studies.
for chair. It's a new state record. Unfortunately, our understanding is going to be that next.
Yes, and I'd have to give credit to Andrea and previous teachers with all of the hard work to also look at pathways for students, that go through 4 years of certain CTC pathways, and they're able to get a 4th year of math with that as well. So giving that flexibility for students is really important.
Questions? Tyler?
So, I have the paper copy, which to me, I think this is very well done, very well laid out. It reads to me like from way back when I was in college, like a college handbook, which I think is excellent for our kids. I noted, again, I read through all of it. There was one section where we note that world language is not a graduation requirement. I thought there was a directive covering this if we have to have 2 years, correct?
Not yet. So
Not
that would
yet?
be the current 7th graders. That will be their requirement.
Okay.
Starting that
I'm
class.
sure this will update eventually.
It does.
Yeah.
And there's so you guys probably didn't know this at the time, but it was something in the agenda tonight that I think affected a couple of spots in here. We make reference to the summer extended night school.
I wasn't approved yet.
It wasn't approved yet, so that was it. No, well done.
And they can make that change because it's approved from the
Right.
school committee, and then
This
they'll
is-
just
this is
update.
excellent.
Thank you.
Comments or questions? Oh, Andrew?
Your lens, so there's obviously a lot of variance, some revisions throughout. Any notable revisions from your point of view, or anything that you think it's good for us to have a line of sight on?
The 3 courses that were approved by the school committee are added in there, so the descriptions are in there. So that is a notable change. Graduation project we did add in there, along with the years of the classes that are affected who still have the graduation portfolio and those that are going to be doing the graduation project. So we have that description in there as well.
And this is my time to give the shout out. So Ms. Bernanetti and Ms. Spaz just finished Friday visiting every 9th grade advisory to review the graduation project. Nice job.
All right. Move this to a vote. All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Just as a reminder, if everybody could speak into their microphones, it's hard to hear, and unfortunately I've heard that the audio on the YouTube is cutting in and out a little bit, so we're going to do our best. 3-minute chunks, is that what you're hearing? So unfortunately, but if you could just be mindful to speak up, that would be excellent. Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is request for monitor variance. This item comes up every year for the school committee, just as a reference point. I recommend approval to submit a request for a variance for the 2023-2024 school year from the requirement which stipulates that bus monitors must be provided on all buses transporting students in grades kindergarten through grade 5. This request only applies to the secondary bus runs which happen on the main campus. We are requesting the variance for grade 5 only.
Any questions?
next item on your agenda is item D, resolution in support of full funding of categorical transportation aid as outlined in RIGL 16-7 2-6. This is an item that we did place on the agenda last year, but later we're asking that we do that sooner so we can get that to our town councils and representatives to support in the legislature this year. I do recommend approval of the resolution in support of full funding of categorical transportation aid as outlined in our RIGL 16-726, which I will forward on to the Rhode Island School Communities Association and superintendents as well as the legislation. Questions?
For the public, so this is where we're asking to be fully funded for the transportation categorical aid from the state budget. That's something that we always wait with bated breath to see if that funding is going to come through, and oftentimes we're well into our budget process before we know if the money is coming through. So we are sending a resolution to hopefully get an answer on that so we can more clearly make our budget.
Have restored the categorical transportation fund for the year.
Last year, they did, correct. We got full funding last year. So the governor's budget isn't out yet. That comes out next week. So our goal is to ensure that the governor's budget has it, and then the legislature doesn't cut it, and they keep it until they vote for the governor's budget.
Towns, I'm sure, right?
Yep.
Are we also sending it to the governor's office?
The governor's office,
Okay.
we also send it to the other regional districts
Yep.
that have the same concerns, and then typically their town councils, so on and so forth.
So two things. Thank you for including in the be it further resolved a copy of this resolution sent to outlining that. And secondly, can we also include a correspondence from our chair to our sister towns requesting that they bring this forward and that we would appreciate their support. I think the context that you provided is also helpful. So there are new town councilors as well, and so they may not have an understanding of what this resolution, the context of this resolution. So simply, can a communication be included with the transmission of the resolution and requesting their support, and that they also sign similar resolutions.
Any other questions? All those in favor?
Also unanimous, thank you. So we've come to budget discussion. At the last meeting, there was a member of the public who said that she felt disrespected when the superintendent brought forth the budget and there was a 6.4% increase included in the presentation. So I'd like to make an apology to anybody who was offended by that request. And let me explain my thought process. Superintendent and I did have a conversation about how it was best to present this budget. My recommendation was to present the budget transparently with this is what we need in increases to keep travel the way it is today. It wasn't my intent to go forward to taxpayers and say, give us 6.4% in increases. I didn't think that was a fiscal possibility, and frankly, I knew that given last year's budget votes that wasn't a possibility. So it wasn't done in a way to offend anybody or to be disrespectful to anyone or to taxpayers. Again, I apologize for not making that clear to taxpayers that we weren't thinking we were going to ask you for 6.4% in increases. We fully understand that there are cuts to be made, but I did feel that to be transparent and fair to this entire process, I wanted the community to see that to keep charitable the way it is right now today, we would need an increase of 6.4%. So again, if there's any misunderstandings, please feel free to ask me directly or send me an email. I want this process to be transparent, and I want this process to be collaborative. And it was surprising to me that someone, and I heard it from two different sources, that they felt disrespected. So please understand, that was not at all the intent. It was really done with transparency in mind.
So before we begin with the conversation on FY24 budget, I just want to reiterate At the first budget workshop, I present the initial budget that Catherine very nicely sort of gave you the big picture overview, and it's located on our website. There are 2 additional budget workshops that our school committee will host, as well as the omnibus next Wednesday. This is the first time it's on as a business item, and it remains on the agenda up until the school committee's final review and approval of the budget and moves forward to our taxpayers. With that being said, there's
The balance.
as school committee members, you have a responsibility to our students with always a taxpayer in mind. But the number one individual that we have to remind ourselves about every single time we think about the budget is our students. I'm your educational liaison. That is my number one responsibility, to tell you what you need to continue to run a high-quality district. We are top in the state. That was not always the case. There's been a lot of groundwork created at this district. I've been here 3 years. I'm proud to be here. I'm impressed by our educators, our staff, our administrators, our school committee members, because that is something I'm very proud to say that has happened every single time I've sat in this seat with the school committee. That being said, the Charahoe future of education lies in your hands every time a budget is presented. There are decisions that have to be made, and they will not be easy. Level funding of a budget has implications to a district. There's a lot of conversation around fund balance. And for those, the best way I could explain fund balance is, rather than living paycheck to paycheck, this is a multi-million-dollar organization. This is a $60 million organization. This is not my home. I can't just turn the thermostat down, or say to one of my children, I no longer can afford 3 children. One of you is going to have to figure out where you can go. And I don't mean that to be slight, but you have to figure out, and there's things. But doing that in my home is not the same as doing that in a multi-million-dollar organization. Impacts moving forward after level funding to get to towns to be under that 4% mean cuts to staff, to students, programs, and services and supports that we have invested in to ensure Charahoe's high quality. Throw that all in, inflation over the last 10 years has increased, and our budgets have not increased at the rate of inflation. If you go back to minutes beginning in 2000, you will hear John P. and then after that, Barry Ritchie explain that there was only so long that you can put the fund balance to 2% and be a thin, lean budget. People have said we can cut money. We can cut money, but it will impact students and services. So can I come before you tonight? I was asked to come before you tonight and provide suggestions. Many of you had ideas that you wanted to hear about in dialogue. That's absolutely appropriate. We should. You should push on us to get you those responses and those answers. But this conversation, I think we have a responsibility to ensure that we're engaging in a way that is honest and transparent, so that when parents find out in July that buses were cut because we had to increase routes, that they're not sitting there saying, I didn't realize that's what was on the line. So I have a responsibility to our families, our staff, our students, always, to ensure that they understand those implications. And I know we look at line items, and I know we see final dollar amounts, but I need you to think about your grandchildren, the future of your future doctor, your future mechanic, your future cosmetologist. These are individuals we want them to have those opportunities. And it's going to be tough, and it's going to be hard, but I can tell you, the work that you do here, if you've made decisions in the best interest of students, then you will go to sleep and feel that you've done the best that Charahoe has to offer for our students. So I thank you, and I appreciate that you let me get on my soapbox a little. There was one other thing I wanted to mention that I think is important to note. Some people have said to me, what do you think it is? Why do you think people just want to say no to a budget? And I heard, we're getting taxed out of our houses. The inflation is high. But I want to note, last year there were towns, Hopkinton was one of them, that had no increase. It returned $120,000 and the vote was still no. And that happened in 2013. There was a decrease in the budget for overall, and Hopkinton was one that voted no. So I don't think it's just about increase or decrease, because if you look at the track record, that's not the case. There's other things at play, and I'm open, my door's always open, reach out via phone or email, but I'd like to know how we can understand the investment that Charahoe has and the asset that it is in our town, because if we start to dismantle our educational system, people will start to move out of the town, and that will also have a financial impact. So again, thank you for that time, but we're gonna be putting out an FAQ this week, the school committee's already seen it, to be able to continue to answer questions and to really help with messaging so people are very clear about what we're discussing.
I want to raise the temperature in this room. I'm freezing.
I believe the temperature is set at 65. Yeah, I believe it was 65. It's about 65. So this is 65 classroom. If you're learning all day, this is the classroom.
Yes, I'm freezing.
No, we feel lower. Yeah, depends on the weather. Questions from that?
That said, I just want to publicly say, as I did the other day in the budget hearing, that we strive really hard not to impact the program and the quality. We've been on an upward trajectory as long as I've lived in this area for the quality of the education we provide in Sharon Home. And I would hate to see a few dollars, and it's not a few dollars, I'm not making light of the increase, but I would hate to say that it's going to suffer as a result of people in the community who are actually, and we had someone here the other day who, at the budget hearing, who said, I advocated against voting for the budget. I advocated cut the budget, cut the budget, cut the budget. I'd hate to see that affect this year's budget for the second year in a row.
So part of the budget presentation that's online, just for clarification for the public, is really where those increases exist. Obviously, like many of you, the fuel, oil, electricity, operating costs overall are one of our largest expenses, and our special education allocation. We are a public school system. When students arrive, and they don't necessarily all arrive on day one, we are responsible to ensure that they have the services required by the law. That is federal. That is not something that we can say, well, you know, you're welcome, and we're not going to give you your occupational therapy, your physical therapy, your speech pathology, your IEP support, resources. We're required to do that. And if we have 5 students show up that's unbudgeted, we are required to make sure those services are provided. So if you look at the budget, you will see the increase in special education costs. You will see the increase in operating costs. You will see overall, that's where the majority is, inflation as well. But overall, and we're going to show in our FAQ coming up this week that Cherhoe has always been under the inflation rate, always, much, much lower.
My concern is that, you know, we bring up the classes, the AP, but when you look at the YCAP scores, and we have like 60% that are not meeting or achieving standards. Those kids, the majority of which are graduating, they are not going on to college. And since we're investing all of our resources and our money on fast tracking those AP students and those kids that are going to college. And as far as you said that they are getting college credit, they accumulate, it's not free to them because we're paying a teacher to teach those classes.
I would disagree with your interpretation. One, YCAS is for grades 3 through 8, the data you're suggesting. AP classes are for high school students, and that's the SAT. That data is completely different. So like, for example, we asked about the number of AP students, about 181 this year. I can tell you in high school there are 200 spring in student sports. So you have the same number of kids in sports, the same number of kids in AP. So there are decisions to make. Maybe I have an athlete, that's what I'm worried about. Maybe I have a student with AP classes, that's what I'm worried about. The number is the same. It's not just students who invest in college. We have students who are in our career and tech who have a pathway that they want to go directly into a career. We just received funding, full funding, for a food truck for students who can leave high school and have a restaurant business in a food truck the day that they graduate. There's a lot of opportunities. Education is about opportunity. Education is about ensuring that we provide students what they need to be successful future citizens. And when they invest in the future, and they invest back in our towns, then that's an economic advantage for all of us. So yes, you're making an investment, and that's what we need to show people. We need to help our public understand why is this a good investment. And you said 60%. To be fair and transparent, we have a pandemic, and the fact that we could get to almost exactly where we were, and 3 of us
Missed
by 1 point and others by 1 or 2 is amazing. And instead of harping on the fact that we have success, education is not just about scores. They are important. That's our core, academic. It's about relationships. It's about the students who leave here remembering that I want to come back to Charo because that's the education experience that allowed me to do better in my community and to give back to my community. They're going to want to run out of here if we continue to dismantle. So when you say we're paying for it, yes, that's our job. The public education is about funding student access and opportunity.
It's also regret, the amount of teachers, we're investing in our teachers, we're investing in the reading and reading programs, we're investing in the new math programs. I mean, that's all part of improving, if you want, the right excellence, but it's also investing in our kids at the lower levels to be successful. True.
We made an 11% increase in mathematics. It's statistically significant.
Typically, you see 2 to 3%. When you have
Over 5, any data statistician will tell you it is statistically significant. It's unheard of. But our work and our educators are amazing. They're asked to do more and more every single day with less and less. I told you, inflation was up. Their supplies got cut. And costs went up. That means they're working with less. And you know what? They understand it because it's the nature, unfortunately, of our profession. I know Edward talks about this a lot. And it is unfortunate. It's not something that's easy. And I told you before, these are a lot of hard decisions. We've got to think about the kind of education we want to put in front of our children and the opportunities, and to understand what that impact will look like to our towns, and we make sure our parents are clear how much these programs cost and what they cost to operate. Athletics cost just as much as running APs, if not more sometimes. And it's important because what are our students going to do if they're not here in their athletics? They're going to, middle school and high school kids, there's nothing around here besides athletics or extracurricular. When we cut those programs, especially at a time where our mental health is a significant increase, we also are going to see concerns. You're going to have to raise money in your police department. Our town budgets are going up, yet the school department continues to get blamed for increases. We get it. None of us, no taxpayer ever wants their taxes to go up. But we've got to look at the investment. What do we want the investment in the education to be? And the community will tell us the kind of education. Because I know, we all know, that's what the community is going to let us know how they want to fund education in Charo. My responsibility to you is to ensure I provide you with the information you need
to make the decisions moving forward.
As long as I've been involved here, it's been a while now, equity in educating every child has been a primary focus to the Charahoe community and the budget and the staff and the administration. The implication that you were saying, Patricia, that the money, a chunk of money is going to the higher achieving students, I think is unfair because I think equity is a primary concern for all students. We have accountability. We have, as Gina said, we have the career in tech. These are major focuses of attention for everything we do, including the budget.
Our building is over-enrolled because if we had this as students out of district, it would cost twofold what you're paying.
Right. So,
Too, which is a little different here because we have CTC. This is almost separate apart from an education conversation. But relative to the budget, we receive tuition from surrounding communities. So Charahoe is unique in that you have also a competitive situation where you're competing with those other school districts for student interest. That tallies up to around $2.5 million. Westerly being the lion's share of that because of their interest in their CTC programs. So those are things we need to be sensitive of our neighbors and their participation as well. And I understand that's not all a local taxpayer consideration, but you still have to run a CTC program to get students career ready. And if those classes aren't full and we're not receiving the tuition, ultimately we'll fall back on the local tax rate. So it's another financial aspect of the complexity of Chariho. We do have to be competitive.
Or is it going to decrease?
Generally speaking, Rhode Island as a whole is decreasing. We've decreased.
The question was about career and tech.
Career and tech has decreased a little bit.
Depending on the program.
We saw South Kingstown, this came up in last year's budget conversation. South Kingstown, Westerly, other coastal communities lost, I think, between 5 and 8% of their population overall. So just because of that, we're going to see a decrease in number of students available to come into us. I don't think our decrease was quite as great as that.
Now, we looked overall at our career tech programs. Overall, we're pretty much sustaining our CTC pathways. You do have some fluctuation. Our culinary students are absolutely doubled in size. And a lot of times it's the draw with COVID. Those numbers were a little, students weren't coming to school necessarily. It's the DL aspect, similar to what Catherine said. So, culinary at home may be a little different than culinary in the kitchen. And well-being at home, things like that. So that definitely took a hit across the board, not just for Chariho, but all CTC programming. But we actually saw pretty stable overall. The Rhode Island, state of Rhode Island has lost 2,000 students, most in coastal communities. That they noticed there were 10 districts that did have seen an increase in enrollment. Cumberland being one of them, Barrington. What we noticed is the top performing districts.
Now, added any new career and technical programs and like ones that are, yes, thank you.
Antiquated ones, get rid of some.
And bring on more higher functioning.
We recently just added visual arts, but we had all the programming in place, so there was no budget impact because the programs already existed. But in order to get the official pathway, you have to have approval to ride. When CTC and Chariho High School put forward that proposal about 4 or 5 years ago, maybe, it was denied through RIDE, and it was resubmitted and tailored, and RIDE now accepted it. So visual arts, we were losing students to EWG for visual arts, and now those are pathways where students were actually taking those coursework. So I'm a junior, and I took coursework in that pathway. I can now get complete CTC pathway credit for that.
Yeah.
The Chariho Tech open house, my collector tomorrow, 5:30 to 7:30. That actually is a big draw. That is, now that we're back in person, last year we saw things improve and applications double because they didn't see and have the experience to actually see the sites. Another draw that we had is we want what we call a 4x4 schedule, so that students have 90-minute classes, when not many high schools will run like a 55-minute or 45-minute period. The fact that they can be in their programming for 90 minutes is an additional draw, which is why we see an increase overall.
Can you also just give a snapshot in terms of where we're at a point in time? I suspect that not everyone who is present today was present at our last budget meeting, and so if I recall correctly, the superintendent, the school committee, had given you guidance in terms of next steps, and I assume that will be for our next budget workshop. So maybe if you can just sort of give a quick snapshot as to where we're at in the process and next steps.
So, like Catherine mentioned, the proposal, the preliminary budget that was presented to the school committee was at 6.64% overall as an aggregate. And the guidance for the school committee on Thursday's budget workshop was to work to get every town under the 4% mark. That is about $1.97 million. I know with the audit preliminary pretty much completed and we're getting ready to set the budget workshop agenda, the audit and the budget cleanup, and again, I'm going to say preliminary because we don't have state aid. So to begin a process without knowing what the governor's budget is going to say is concerning because we don't know what the state aid allocation. That's why we continue to say preliminary. Also, the healthcare costs, we budget at a certain amount, and then that comes in the beginning of February. So we get things as we're going along, so we've got to be thoughtful about that. So with the cleanup and the audit final, it's about $330,000 difference. So that's going to be helpful. So that brings that $1.97 million that Ned mentioned back to, and then you could subtract 330,000, because that's the cleanup, audit, finalized, and we have those. But again, that number could be higher if state aid comes in lower, and it could get better if state aid comes in better. One thing being the transportation and categorical. And another way you can talk to your legislator about supporting school budgets is fully funding special education. As I told you, it's one of the largest increases overall, and we are not alone. That's every single district. I was asked about library books. For example, the cost of library books for the entire district for next year was $14,000. So if that's something the committee wants to think about. I was asked about furniture requests. That is a total for the district would be $15,000. Just as a reminder, that was cut last year. And I suggest people walk through the buildings. You won't see, a lot of great furniture. And if you do see it, most likely it was paid for by the grant. In a grant, oftentimes what we see and what we get new. I'm very proud of the work we've done in grant development. We've received over $2 million in the last 6 months. We are working very hard, our teachers, our admins, and our development officers to ensure with our administrators that we're bringing in every dollar possible. With the $1.2 million grant, we could make a change and move the dean at the middle school into ESSER funding. We're actually hoping that the federal government will increase title funding, which will be a support to the middle school, and therefore we could fund it in that way if that comes to fruition. Right now, because of the mental health dollars, we could have to shift in ESSER and move that dean. That would be approximately $150,000. I was asked about, well, last year the school committee did the DCYS placeholders. That's, it's a risky, cut. It was made. But that, I was asked to, that number again is about $55,000 per placeholder. We have two in the budget. The athletic equipment was one that we mentioned, and that was $16,500 that the committee could look at. As we move down, or any of the other suggestions committee members had around staff support, enrollment size, that's absolutely the way we do this. So what I've mentioned to you are things that will they have an impact? Of course, but not the impact. The dean is kicking his hand down the road. I can tell you, I'm sure Mr. Denny will tell you, or a middle school teacher, or high school, but the dean, we have child line investigations. We have parents who want supervision in every bathroom, and that costs dollars. And there's only so much that we can do. Cafeteria supervision. Our teachers, the ones saying, the teachers could do that. Well, that's not saying that they couldn't, but in the end, that's another lift on an educator that is already taxed from the work that we've asked them to do. So we could do some busing adjustments. Ned has been working Ocean State to think through opportunities in busing, change some routes to be longer. That gives us maybe about 80,000, we're still running proposal numbers, and because the workshop was Thursday and it's Tuesday, so I think we just need some more time. And again, after that, you're looking at increasing class sizes, just so people are clear. In general, class sizes at the high school are, in the contract, are at 30. We have never gone to 30, not as a committee directed. Even in each classroom, that is not something that the district is used to. Not how typical programs are operated. In middle school, in grades 7 and 8, it would be 28 that we maximize class size. And in 5, 6, I believe it's 25. And then same thing with K through 5, it would be 25. And in the time where we're trying to build back the education of our students, increasing class size, incoming staff is not something that I could say would be good this year. But is it possible? Any direction you have is possible. But you're not going to get to $1.97 million in furniture and library books and supplies.
And so everything that you just described, so one, thank you, and everything that you just described will be contemplated in our next budget workshop.
I've been, many of you have sent me our email.
If we could, I'd like to take action on the Akova adjustment.
So, I'm asking them to approve a recommendation of approval of the $330,000 to cut from the budget based on the code duplication and the preliminary audit review.
So,
$330,000. Any questions?
So I would bring your attention to the budget books, specifically section 4, page 13, row 843. Sure, it's section 4, page 13, row 843. So you can see there looks to be a coach's employee. This is a stipend, and it sits all by itself on that line for $113,000. What we realized when we looked at the budget, the lines 835 through 846, or actually, I'm sorry, through 844, which I just mentioned, have doubled up when we loaded the UCOA on some of those lines. So that has a net change of just about $200,000. So what I'm asking for is to be able to adjust that, make that UCOA adjustment. And you can see it from a practical standpoint. If you look at the FY23 adjusted budget, it's about 209. And then you look at FY24, it's 416. Obviously, we didn't double our coaching and those sorts of things. So that's one set of adjustments. And then if you drop down with me to row 865 through row 883, we have the same issue. And you can see that the total there is 206. It should be closer to the 104, which you see for FY23. So those changes tally up to roughly $100,000. So what I'm asking for is permission to remove those duplicates. That will drop us down by $300,000. Any questions on how that happened, why it happened, anything like that? Yeah, I'll do this.
Any further questions? Right.
I'm just curious of the process. If it was a mistake in the first place, why didn't you just take it right out? Why should we even vote?
Because we didn't realize it until after the budget was printed and presented to.
Okay.
Just be so clean, why would you?
Fair enough.
Yeah.
We don't just make changes, we'll let you know. All those in favor?
Thank you.
On the audit.
Yep, the audit's in process. That's one of the things we noted in the budget process. If you look at the cover page, which is section 2, and if we go up to the roughly the center section, which shows the member towns reallocation of fund balance, and there's a note that says leaving 2.25% in fund balance. Right now, that specifies $356,298. We're asking to change that to is $388,462. What that represents is that same 2.25%, but there has since been an adjustment to what the final numbers are in the FY22 audit. So that number will go up by roughly $30,000. And technically, you'll be doing this when you receive the audit, because we bring the audit to the school committee for authorization. So you'll be doing it at that step anyway, but might as well get some good news now. Thank you.
Any further questions?
All those in favor?
We had discussed it earlier, sort of. I'm still curious that after many years, I still never received the answer. Basically, I'd like to know why the state forces school districts, LEAs, to fund CCRI education, dual enrollment, or anything of that nature when kids that graduate go for free. I'm just curious. I just would like to know why.
it's very hard to tell you what's in other people's heads or, you know, why others do what they do.
I only asked the question so the public here. We asked the question so the public hears.
I do have, I have a couple questions. So I want to take a sheet you were
Yes. Yep.
What that is.
Sure. If we go to, section 5.
He's gonna go to section 5.
So if we go to section 5, it is the lines above the local aid. So if you look at the town appropriations, and then down below that there are 3 lines that say UR, state aid from towns. You would draw a line there. The lines above and the lines below make up that 7,025,000. And you can see there's a variety of lines to make that up. Correct. So I can explain. So last year, to the point of committee member Cavasante, last year, there was a lot of work done to get a full allocation of state aid for categorical. Categorical by law is 50% of your prior year's actual spending on transportation. Now, what has happened in practice is that has not always been fully funded. And when you have like money, of course, you know, those costs were much less, and then that filters through a couple of years later because of the way the budget process works. This 2,609 number is 50% of last year's transportation spend. So we're hoping to get that full amount.
And to Ms. Blazon's question, just for edification, he asked, you know, if there's law, state statute that says that they have to fund regionalized transportation, how can they not fund it in the governor's budget? And on clarification last year, John Anderson spoke to the committee and explained that when the governor signs his budget, it becomes new law. That's why that can happen. Not that that makes anybody happy, but that's the explanation of why when the governor's budget would supersede that previous legislation.
I can stay on that if you want to, but I don't think I actually want to. Then I'm going to throw this one at you again. Can you explain for myself and for everybody who's sitting out here exactly what maintenance of effort is?
Sure. Maintenance of effort operates on a few different levels. When it comes to special education, maintenance of effort says, you know, let's say our overall spending on special education is $11 million. The expectation from the state as well as the Fed is that you will spend at least that much money on your special education students locally next year. So if we spent $11 million this year, next year the expectation is we'll spend $11,001,001. Now the question becomes, well, what if you have fewer students? Then you can get into some other calculations that they get a little more complex, but it can still follow back to that bottom line, which is, did you spend $1 more overall on the students? If the answer is yes, your local support was at or above last year's local support, you qualify for the federal funding and you don't have to pay it back.
So again, easier explanation, we think about part just for those of us that don't live in that finance world. If you gave me $50 to run my budget last year, then you have to at least give me $50. You can't say I'm going to give you $49.99. That's a simplistic way to think about it. But RIDE gets to weigh in on certain pieces of that as well.
So that's at a certain level within the budget, but also overall as the budget as a whole, correct?
So the next layer of this conversation would be maintenance of effort at the local level works along the same logic, which is if you spent X number of dollars last year, and that's why a zero budget can happen, then you can spend zero the next year. However, you also look at how much you spend per pupil, depending on the number of students you have.
All right, so, and the driving force for this conversation is the conversations I've had outside of the school committee, in the community, and we all know, like, we're in unprecedented times right now. Inflation's out, energy prices are off the roof, through the roof. We're all living in the automatic case in my house today. Everybody hates seeing that truck pull in right now. So we budget for X amount for, say, oil for this year. We hit a recession, which by all forecasts is probably going to happen within the next year. Those costs decrease. We've approved a budget that has now allocated $4 a gallon for oil. Oil falls back to $2 a gallon. Are we stuck next year funding at those same levels because of maintenance of effort?
So here's another piece, and then I think Committee Member Bill Day was pretty critical of the transfers, but I think he was also practical of, we have a large budget, it's a $60 million budget. So let's say, for instance, going back to today's topics, you cut those two special education placeholders, DCYF. You cut those two DCYF placeholders. Well, we know that there's a lot of mental health issues, right? We may have to come up with that money. We would transfer from oil, we would pay those tuitions.
Right. Now, this is, again, I'm bringing to you what I've heard and what people have asked me. This is nowhere where my head's at right now.
And we really tried, last year for oil, we really want our consumption to achieve, but rates still increase.
Absolutely.
Yeah, an area I'd look at would be transportation last year. You can see where that filtered through and our transportation costs exceeded what we had budgeted. Fortunately, we were able to make it work. But our budget, I will say, our budget last year on a budgetary basis was pretty much right breaking.
Yeah, it shows the $30,000 decrease in the fund balance, right? That's your record.
Well, yeah, and at the budget workshop on Thursday, there was a conversation about maybe we had something about $3.2 million in surplus. We don't use the fund balance because the reason why we use that word is because the money gets directly recycled back into the next operating budget. I know you know this, for those that don't. So if money is spent, and sometimes because of vacancy, we have a budget freeze this year, so we are continue to watch every single penny that goes out. The idea is that if there is a leftover, that money is placed back into our FY25 operating budget to be reallocated based on the school committee. And again, the fund balance is your rainy day. It's different is paycheck to paycheck, our savings account in case the refrigerator breaks down, and maybe grandma's gonna move in with you because she has some implications or things that happen. But these are things that you budget for your home but have to take on. That's the purpose of the fund balance, and there's governmental guidelines for that. We don't just say, hey, we think, last year you can look at it about $2 million. This year it's less than $400,000. And again, $6 million operation, that's not going to get you far. If I have 2 students move in that need special education, we haven't had snow because you're looking at, when people ask me about, overtime custodians. Well, we can shut down all the recreation programs, not allow summer programs for towns, and that may get you about $55,000. These are the implications.
And I'm done, I promise. For tonight, anyway. Gina, can you talk to me about that $1.2 million mental health grant you just got and how that might impact the budget this year and what that's for?
So it actually, it's, we held our breath for that grant because we didn't budget the mental health support that we needed. We had heard from RIDE that we had attempted a grant last year that we did not receive. It actually went to Foster, Kentucky, and Providence. We actually felt that our grant was better, of course we did, but it was pretty robust. I think we got a lot of accolades from RIDE saying that it was a very well thought out grant, one of the best they've seen. And to not give up, there was some other opportunities. And when opportunities came in, we said, roll down the dice. Let's put all our bucket into the mental health support. We use the Effective School Solutions contract. We have our clinicians at the middle school and high school this year funded this year through ESSER. But the idea is that we would continue that work, our suicide prevention work, also state mandated with ESSER for right now. And now taking that and moving that into the grant, we did roll the dice, hoping we heard from RIDE that we were well placed to be able to succeed in getting that.
So that grant's already allocated in what we're
Yeah, we hope we got that when we did this budget. Except for, like I said to you, the dean was something that, because we could do the suicide prevention work and some of the contract stuff with the clinicians. It is June 24th and June 22nd. I'm really going on. January 24th and January 26th, and the omnibus meeting is next Wednesday, and that's with the three towns, ourselves, the school committee, and our state legislature. The CCC 105, 107 Career Tech Building. This is my first one in person, so I'm thinking next year we can figure out how to do it. Now we have a different setup, but it's publicized like that. So all the best that we get.
Another adjustment I noticed, which is late information, saved for the next workshop with the substance abuse prevention grant. We got the final rates on that, so that's another adjustment. Yeah, I can read them out. There's section 4, page 14, rows 4997, 4. Sorry. Section 4, page 14, row 4997 through 5000.
What's the contract living in that? So I recommend approval of the change to the vision to the amount of approximately.
So it's just about $6,000. It'll be a reduction of $6,000.
$6,000 for vision services in section page 14 of 37, section 4. Earth and vision services.
It should be. I think it's 4997 is what it is.
That's not it. 499.
4997 is substance abuse prevention.
That's, oh, I'm sorry, I had the wrong page. Yes, 4997. 99.
So up to 5,000.
Substance abuse prevention. So,
Correct.
And the recommendation is for the substance abuse prevention, update for the numbers based on the contract being received, section line 4997, in the amount of 5,000.
Excuse me?
Consent agenda, consent agenda.
I didn't know no one's pulled any.
I have no.
So, Madam Chair, I'd like to move all the consent agenda items, but before I do, I'd like to acknowledge the donations. One from Staples and Wesley, 53 boxes, 12 donation kits in each box of miscellaneous school supplies for over 10,000 items to the district. These kits were purchased by customers to be donated to schools. And two, donation from Sensible Heating and Air Conditioning, Hope Valley, Rhode Island, $1,000 for the robotics program. And I'd like to acknowledge also Jay Grant receiving $16,841 in grant awards from Community 2000 Education Foundation. Last awards received from Chris Phillips. That's a motion.
Second.
Did you have a question on consent agenda before we approve it? Okay, so procedurally, if there's one.
I rescind my motion.
Yeah, so, no. Okay. So if there's something specifically here, you pull that one out, and then we'll approve the rest of it. So is there one that you'd like to speak of specifically?
I did want to ask a couple of questions about H3, which was the $10,440 in the Patrick fund.
Perfect, so we're gonna pull
H3, and then
I'd like to move the remainder and also acknowledge the donations again.
those in favor of moving the remainder.
Now, Madam Chair, process, I'd like to make a motion to approve H3.
Question?
Discussion.
Okay, there was, it looks as though, Mr. Camilla, you had worked with, I don't understand where this generates from. Does staff come to you and say they want to attend these sessions?
No, so this is for, right now we're in the final year of 2028, and we're following the right process with strategic plan. He is going to actually, they worked on our last strategic plan with us, and they're actually going to provide support.
So there's a request for proposals that go out for the state purchasing law. Those RFPs go out, they're reviewed, and then people bid on those positions, that's the team, they do the selection, there's criteria based in the request for proposal that the individual has to come up, if they do say they have to under a certain amount of money, because that's allocated investor, and see what the state calls a resource cost. And actually have, it was the only one that attended to all the criteria, one being one in the world, we have, and the others from other school districts that they worked on strategic planning, which is now part of the state budget. So they were working with the working league. They are working with the steering committee, which is myself, Vanilla, Joe Gizzarelli, Mary Beth Florence, and Hugh Reckoning. Those are our teaching and learning assistant principals, and Mr. Gizzarelli, the community over, has oversight in our elementary school. So they with the steering committee, and there's also a liaison team, so Catherine Juicy and our team members on that committee, along with all the children who team work. So this work is being done at the school planning on that level. So their work is for the district strategic plan to be able to meet the requirements of the work required in the general assembly to go forward in the 2019 motion. That's the I'm just reading, I'm trying to read that more also equivalent. It doesn't work with the community watching the other students.
So,
That's a complication.
so, not, fund, right? Fund is, through our strategic planning process, there are certain, part of the strategic planning process, we list facilitators, to support that process. That's what
The actual plan is required by law, because we have to make sure that the we have goals that before when you did this work, it was, always important. It wasn't legislative. Now it's legislative because you have to meet the requirements of the law. For example, when on the report that asks about the YCAS scores, we have a responsibility in that strategic plan to say that we have to at least get 80% proficiency in English language arts and mathematics. So that's part of this work, and then community members from the group team on the governing body of the school work to develop action steps and initiatives that will get us to the
in writing the planning process, it's not that we don't have staff that you are competent facilitators that are effective.
Yeah.
So if I don't think we have very I think it is intended to reflect that we all have biases, we all have thoughts, and it affords sort of level playing field. So instead of, let's say, the superintendent being facilitator, which is empowering, right? If educators are involved in conversation, community members are involved in conversation, the independent facilitator, I think, is intended to act just as us, independent of the superintendent, independent of the school committee members. Ultimately, the recommendation the strategic guide the process for that, ensure that a variety of voices are heard, and brings a variety of data skills and credibility and fidelity to the process.
It's very typical of requires community involvement, requires students have to take many people up. If you're going to provide work for your state, two will be more. It's a process for academics versus, district.
And an adverse impact on our budget, so we become an adverse impact on costs.
Well, what if at some point, there's a lot of equity within this group that I'm just reading it, initially. What if this is pure equity audit as a tool, or they're recommending that we audit? If you can correct,
That's not the goal. How does it,
all that.
well, education was built. The reason why you have the IDEA Act is because students in special education were not provided equity. And again, easy definition for equity, equality is we all get a parachute. Equity is we all get the side student. That's the difference between equity and equality. That's the easiest way to explain it. So, what I plan is to take, which specifically says, if we have to assure equity, it's called a smart goal, because easy equity, it's required, the school committee, I would know why I would really want education, that's the goal of the do, is to ensure that all students have access. And in that case, I'm not surprised that we see for equity, because that's what education is about. I'm just concerned that this is
Further expense down the road from what I'm reading.
Well, there's the way I'm reading it, there's,
$10,000
for professional students, and then we're training our teachers.
It's to facilitate the strategic plan that's required. Three facilitation events, five have community members involved. So our school group team are those members that can be taking a lot. And it's very important to have some people on the district to say to other members of the district, you've talked a lot, you need to stop talking right now. That's really what the facilitator do, shut certain people down and say, okay, and it was helpful that somebody outside of the district, I'm not gonna say that, you know what I mean, but visibility might say that, you know, okay, you know, thank you so much for your work, and now we're moving on, so that's what the goal is. It's not to drive the process, it's to help facilitate, so we can all have a conversation about what we want to facilitate like in 2028. So that's big.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
And
Big
one
process.
It's actually the least of
Or 50,000 in.
interesting to see.
So
So that 10,440 is basically the
salary
for the person who conducts and
The requirements
so
are not
not
just
just
for
the decision, but the documents prepared ready for the meetings, all of them will required of all the sessions. That is the salary. And it's part.
There's deliverables that are expected
from the board. Any all those in favor?
strategic planning
Well, and actually, I would think legislative, that's for the general assembly. Why was mandated to ensure there was a process, but the general assembly, 2019 project school improvement, legislation, mandated that all districts have a strategic plan, a 3-year strategic plan, your previous plan, 5, this is every 3 years.
Okay,
So the process is mandated.
facilitated
We selected from the pressure proposal, like, who we are going to use, based on the budget that we. Right. Yeah.
But, and just want to acknowledge, typically, once something comes to a vote has been called, it's time to vote and end the deliberation, because that theoretically, based on your questioning and the response, we have that and others, so specifically to that process.
All those in favor? And opposed? Okay, subcommittee report, the audit subcommittee meeting will be upcoming, held on January 19th at 5:30 p.m. in the admin building conference room. For my superintendent's report, we have Odyssey preparation. Last month, we officially announced that the Odyssey is returning. We held on Saturday, April 1st, at Sherrill Middle School. We are planning fabulous displays of student artwork, student musical performances, and drama performances. We will also be highlighting our charitable pathways, as well as activities with a focus on science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, also known as STEM. We hope you all will join us at that wonderful event. It's sure to be an outstanding day. We are also planning our budget town hall. We had a 14 town hall, if you remember, back in the fall. The budget town hall is made up of school personnel and district personnel that will discuss the budget and questions to the public and our families that may not want to come to a school committee meeting but want to interact with the district to be able to ask some budgetary questions. That we'll be having on February 2nd, and it will be here in the library by Triumph. We're going to make a final decision this week with the messaging that will go off to families around where we are in the process. And we're hoping that we find ways to continue to ensure our budget process is transparent, open to dialogue, and ways that engage our community to understand the investment we are making in education for our child.
And then with that, we have upcoming
Okay,
events.
we have our Richmond School PTO meeting at 7 p.m. at Virginia 11. We also have our Terre Haute Check House, 5:30 to 7:30, tomorrow, January 11th. On January 12th, we have our early release day, secondary is dismissed at 12:45, elementary at 1:55. There'll be no PM pre-K, AM will attend this day. January 15th, there are no schools for students and staff. January 18th is our finance committee meeting at 6 p.m. in the admin building conference room. On January 18th, we also will have omnibus meeting at 7 p.m. in CCC rooms 105 and 107 in Sparrow Tech. And January 20th, Charlestown School PTO spaghetti supper, 5 to 8 p.m. in the cafeteria. January 23rd, Richmond School Improvement Team meeting, 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. in the library. January 24th, budget workshop, 6 p.m. high school library. January 26th, Charlestown School Improvement Team meeting, 7:30 to 8:30 a.m. January 27th, secondary end of grade period, second quarter, first semester. January 30th, Hope Valley School Vision Screening. February 2nd, our CALA Comprehensive Support and Improvement Community Advisory Meeting, 2:30 and 124. February 6th, Hope Valley School PTO meeting, 6:30 in the library. February 7th, Charlestown School PTO meeting, 6 p.m. in the art room. And February 9th is our next regularly day, secondary is Smith 12:05, elementary at 1:55, no AM pre-K, PM road. Now, the school committee request to consider the items for legal and any future. Andrew.
One, the again, the resolution, approved funding special education. One, and two, communications, with our sister towns. And so specifically, the, community company stuff, want to, we have an agenda item, provide towns the opportunity to take notice that agenda item and likewise similar ask of our sister towns.
But it's going to be working on, the change this course of. I'm actually, the school committee did it, that happened before the programs are approved by school committee. They're part of the minutes and presentation. We could put it back in the agenda.
Either one, the next two, one,